In the quiet elegance of Hillsborough Castle, Northern Ireland, the sound of cameras clicking filled the crisp October air. Diplomatic convoys had been arriving since dawn, bringing ministers and envoys from across Europe. Inside, under the vaulted ceilings of this historic estate, a sense of anticipation built, not just for a summit on the Western Balkans, but for something far larger. It was October 9th, 2025, the day Germany would call historic.
This is really a historical day, not only for Israel and the people in Gaza, but I would say also for the whole world. My current mood is a feel of deep relief that we saw a breakthrough in these complicated negotiations between Israel and Hamas. And I would like to thank everybody who was responsible for this, especially the President of the United States, who put into his political weight to make that success possible. This is the first phase, and I hope it will be implemented very soon. So we now have to prepare the next phases, and I can, for the German government, assure everybody that what will be expected from our side, we will do, especially humanitarian aid, which is so much needed in the Gaza Strip. So many people suffering in a very dire situation. We are ready to step up our efforts. We are ready to do everything what is needed right now.
British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper moved through the ornate corridors, welcoming her guests one by one. Italy's Maria Tripodi, Bulgaria's Georg Georgiev, Croatia's Gordon Gulick-Radman, Austria's Beate Meinl-Reisinger, all exchanging the practiced smiles and formal handshakes that mark the rhythm of diplomacy. But the cameras were waiting for one man in particular, Germany's Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul. When Wadephul stepped out of his car, the press lights caught him mid-stride, calm, deliberate, carrying the weight of a statement that would echo beyond the summit's agenda. Only hours earlier, confirmation had come through from Washington and Doha. Israel and Hamas had agreed to the first stage of a US-brokered ceasefire. After months of devastation, diplomatic fatigue, and humanitarian collapse, the guns were expected to fall silent. Standing before reporters, Wadephul began in measured English, his voice firm, yet touched by relief. "This is truly a historic day," he said, "not only for Israel and the people of Gaza, but also, I would say, for the entire world." He paused, his tone softening as he spoke of the human toll behind the headlines. "I am currently feeling a profound sense of relief that we have seen a breakthrough in these complex negotiations between Israel and Hamas. I would like to thank everyone who contributed to this outcome, especially the President of the United States, who put all his political weight in the balance to make this success possible." For months, the world had watched as President Donald Trump's second-term administration pursued what critics once dismissed as an impossible task, a comprehensive ceasefire in Gaza, linked to a multi-phase plan for reconstruction, prisoner exchange, and international monitoring. But as the details emerged, even Europe's skeptics began to shift. Wadephul's tone captured that pivot, cautious optimism laced with moral conviction. "This is the first phase," he continued. "I hope it will be implemented very soon. We now have to prepare the next phases, and I can, on behalf of the German government, assure everyone that we will do everything expected from us, especially with humanitarian aid, which is so much needed in the Gaza Strip, with so many people suffering in a very dire situation. We are ready to step up our efforts. We are ready to do everything that is needed right now." The words "step up" were not lost on the diplomats gathered in Hillsborough. Germany, often careful in its tone on Middle East issues, was signalling a new readiness to take tangible responsibility in post-war Gaza. That meant money, logistics, and moral leadership. Inside the hall, aides whispered about Berlin's plans to dispatch medical teams, coordinate desalination units, and contribute to a UN-supervised reconstruction fund. Around the same time, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, speaking from Washington, called it the turning of a page. The Trump administration had, after months of shuttling envoys between Tel Aviv, Doha and Cairo, achieved what even their critics called an improbable breakthrough. For Europe, the message was clear. The ceasefire had not only been made in Washington, it now demanded to be owned in Brussels, Berlin and beyond. As Wadephul's remarks circulated through European newsrooms, reaction came swiftly. In Paris, Foreign Minister Beate Meinl-Reisinger praised the agreement as a chance for diplomacy to reclaim relevance. In Warsaw, Poland's Marcin Bosacki told reporters that the real work begins now to make sure the ceasefire does not collapse under pressure. And in London, Cooper echoed the sentiment, saying the United Kingdom stood ready to support humanitarian convoys through Rafah and Ashdod. But Wadephul's presence at Hillsborough added symbolism that went deeper than protocol. Hillsborough Castle, long associated with reconciliation in Northern Ireland, had hosted many peace negotiations in its own right. The setting served as a subtle reminder that even the longest conflicts can find resolution when political will and moral urgency align. As cameras followed the German minister through the gilded hallway, his demeanour remained steady. He stopped briefly to shake hands with Yvette Cooper, a moment captured by photographers that would later appear on front pages under headlines like "Europe embraces Gaza peace" and "Wadephul calls it historic." Yet behind the smiles, the stakes were immense. Over 67,000 Palestinians had been killed, nearly 90% displaced. For Israelis, the trauma of October 7th still haunted every household. The ceasefire was fragile, a thread of hope stretched across a deep wound. In Berlin, Chancellor Friedrich Merz had already signalled his approval. According to government sources, Merz told aides the ceasefire represented the first genuine opportunity for stability in a generation. Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil was said to be drafting a funding package worth €400 million in emergency aid to be announced jointly with the European Commission. The tone from the Chancellery was unmistakable. Germany would not sit back this time. Back at Hillsborough, the summit continued. The Western Balkans agenda, once the centrepiece of the meeting, now felt overshadowed. Still, the delegates pressed on, discussing regional security, EU enlargement, and migration routes through southeastern Europe. But every conversation circled back to Gaza. It was as if the world's moral compass had briefly recentered. Outside the castle, a small group of activists had gathered with banners reading "Ceasefire now, rebuild Gaza." They were joined by members of Northern Ireland's peace community. People who understood, perhaps better than anyone, the long road from ceasefire to coexistence. "Peace is not a signature," one of them said, "it's a process." Their words could just as easily have been Wadephul's. Internationally, reactions rippled through capitals. In Washington, President Trump addressed the media declaring, "Today, the world witnessed what strong leadership and faith in peace can achieve." In Cairo, Egyptian mediators expressed guarded optimism, while in Doha, Qatari officials emphasized the need for commitment from all sides. Even Tehran, in an unusually restrained statement, called the deal a step that could ease the suffering of the Palestinian people. By evening, the images from Hillsborough were already circulating globally. Wadephul standing against a backdrop of European flags, Cooper beside him, the two ministers sharing a moment of quiet satisfaction. For Germany, the message was both moral and political. Europe had to stand not only for diplomacy, but for compassion. In interviews that followed, Wadephul elaborated on what Berlin's next steps would look like. Humanitarian corridors, medical support, rebuilding schools and hospitals, all coordinated through EU channels. "We cannot rebuild Gaza overnight," he said, "but we can make sure hope has a foundation." His phrasing was deliberate, echoing Germany's post-war ethos of reconstruction and moral responsibility. As the day turned to evening in Northern Ireland, the mood was reflective. Diplomats exchanged farewells, aides packed briefcases, and the sound of departing motorcades echoed across the castle's stone courtyard. For once, the news cycle carried more light than darkness, yet the questions ahead remained daunting. Could the ceasefire hold? Would hardliners on either side accept the compromise? And how would reconstruction be managed amid ongoing mistrust? Still, Wadephul's words, "a historic day," captured something deeper than cautious diplomacy. It was a moment when the machinery of politics paused long enough to recognise the power of humanity. In the days that followed, Berlin's pledge materialised. Cargo planes departed from Cologne carrying medical supplies, solar generators and modular housing units. German NGOs began coordinating with the Red Cross and UNRWA for field operations. The Bundestag fast-tracked a humanitarian budget expansion. Even opposition lawmakers voiced rare bipartisan approval. Across Europe, the tone was shifting from cynicism to responsibility. For many Germans, the ceasefire announcement stirred memories of their own nation's divisions and reconciliations. Commentators drew parallels between the Berlin airlift of 1948 and the Gaza relief flights of 2025. Newspapers like Die Welt and Süddeutsche Zeitung framed Wadephul's statement as Germany's re-entry into moral leadership. The symbolism resonated, a country once defined by war now anchoring a fragile peace. Meanwhile, in Israel and Gaza, life began to stir under the first hours of calm. Families emerged from shelters. Aid convoys rolled in under the watch of international monitors. In Gaza City, a child was filmed waving a small white flag as trucks passed. The footage aired on German television that night, paired with Wadephul's voice. "We are ready to do everything that is needed right now." It became an emblem both of commitment and conscience. As the European summit concluded, one final image lingered. The round table at Hillsborough, flags of 20 nations reflected in the polished wood, and a shared understanding that diplomacy, though imperfect, had once again proven its worth. The journalist's closing words echoed what many were thinking. In a world often divided by power and pride, today showed that even fragile hope can find its way through. For Johann Wadephul, for Germany, and for the millions whose lives depend on fragile agreements signed far away, October 9th, 2025 would indeed be remembered as a historic day.
Lovely to see you. Thank you so much. Really nice to have you here. It's a pleasure. It's very active. Thank you so much. Great to have you.
So good morning, everybody.
Sorry.
Three decades on from the Good Friday Agreement, just as we are 3 decades on
from the Dayton Agreement as well. And to be here too in Hillsborough Castle, a symbol of peace and progress and reconciliation, also a moment for reflection for all of us as foreign ministers around the table in office, and the colleagues who will share recommendations from the civil society